It's likely that you've heard that money isn't everything in retirement, right? And that's true. It's not everything in life, but knowing your numbers, that's what allows you to reduce stress, gain certainty, and stop second guessing. When you don't know your numbers, it's hard not to have stress or uncertainty or to be second guessing what you should be doing. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you how clarity around your numbers, especially your income, can completely change how you feel about your retirement. When you know your numbers, you don't just retire, you can actually enjoy your life. Hi, I'm Annette Bau, certified financial planner and founder of the Millionaire Insider. After more than 36 years of advising pre-retirees and retirees, I can tell you this. The happiest retirees aren't the ones with the biggest portfolios. They're the ones who know their numbers and from a standpoint of income as well as expenses. They know what they have, they know what they can spend, and most importantly, they know their income is going to last. Retirement isn't just about how much you've saved, it's about how the money you've saved is going to support your life. When you have clarity, you have confidence. And when you have confidence, you can finally relax and enjoy your life that you've worked so hard to create. Knowing your numbers makes all of this possible. And I really encourage you, if you are within 10 years or even 15 years of retirement, take our retirement readiness quiz. You can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/RRQ. The retirement readiness quiz was created to help you confirm that you're not missing critical information about your retirement. Insight that if you took action on today, you'd be fine in 5 or 10 or 15 years. Insight or information that you may have forgotten or not even know about. Again, you can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/RRQ. This quiz only takes a couple minutes and it's going to help you identify gaps and determine the next best step depending on where you are. So missed items don't become problems. Again, you can access it at themillionaireinsider.com/RRQ. For today's show notes, you can go to themillionaireinsider.com/167. The Millionaire Insider copyrights all materials and intellectual property. This information is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to replace any advice of an advisor or specialist or to provide you any investment, financial, tax, retirement planning, or healthcare advice. Always check with a qualified professional, a fiduciary, before making any financial decisions or changes. So let's dive into Happiness in Retirement, Knowing Your Numbers, Part 2. If you didn't listen to last week's Part 1, I encourage you to go listen to it because that's going to give you insight about really creating an amazing life that's not about the numbers. Today is all about the numbers. So, all right, number one, the first thing I want you to understand is that knowing your retirement paycheck, the amount, matters more than your net worth. Net worth is a snapshot of our assets less our liabilities. Income is what we actually live on every day. And a large portfolio doesn't tell you what you can safely spend each month. A lot of people have assets that are very illiquid. They may have a multi-million-dollar estate. That doesn't mean they've got the income they need. Many retirees with high net worths have a lot of uncertainty because they lack income clarity, and especially long-term income clarity. Your retirement paycheck is what creates real confidence because you have the clarity of knowing what you can spend. It translates your assets into predictable monthly income that's ideally not subject to market volatility. And it's going to answer probably the most important question. Am I going to be okay? Not just now, but in the future. So many people are like, oh, I'm fine. Well, right now you are. Will you be in 5, 10, 15, 25 years? As you know, I think, what is it? It's either 2030 or 2032. Like 1 in 4 people are going to live past 100. Ooh, we've got to be prepared. Without an income plan, it's common to make more emotional decisions. Underspending can be one outcome, and you're doing it out of fear instead of enjoying your life. Or what we see is you overspend and then you create long-term problems and risks. It's really interesting that emotional decisions can go either way. Not spending enough and just having a miserable life where you're so paranoid about money, or overspending and creating just a whole different set of problems. Market volatility becomes less stressful when we have reliable, adequate income. When you're not forced to sell investments at the wrong time or sell them like right when you retire because the market drops. And then it's very difficult to make that up. And a lot of people don't understand that. You can stay focused on your life and not what is happening in the market. I met this guy down at our club and he was so cute. And whenever I'm down at the club, like if I watch him in a talk show, I always ask other people because, I'm like, oh, does somebody consider this, too liberal or too conservative or whatever? I can't even keep track of where everyone stands on that. But, he's like, oh, yeah, fine, no problem, watch it. And then we started talking. And then when we went out, he's like, yeah, I just watch that 24/7 all the time. And I'm always scared about what's happening. And I'm nervous I'm not going to have enough money. And I was just like listening to him. I could just feel his anxiety. And I thought, how miserable. I'm like, well, that might be a first step is to stop watching that. But, the goal is really simple. We got to replace our paycheck. And then you can spend the time doing what you want. And you can stop worrying about how long your money's going to last. All right, number 2, you got to know the key numbers that drive retirement confidence and happiness. Where is your monthly income going to come from? Social Security, corporate pensions, guaranteed annuities, which is basically guaranteed income, or investment income. Knowing when to start each source of income is also important, and when it makes sense to delay it, and what buckets work together to make sure you're minimizing your taxes. All those things are so intricate with each other. And when you have a plan that incorporates all of them, it becomes a lot easier. The next thing you've got to know is your essential need expenses. These are your must-haves like housing, healthcare, insurance, food, basic food, and utilities. And these are the expenses that your plan has to cover regardless. Your discretionary expenses, these are want expenses like nice to haves, travel, entertainment, hobbies, dining out, gifts. And these define our lifestyle and quality of life, but they aren't things you have to have. And the secret, as I mentioned in part 1, is you've got to confirm that you can cut these expenses out of your portfolio if you don't earn enough money. See, I think you have to have guaranteed income for the first bucket, your need-based expenses, your must-haves. But your want-based or your nice-to-have, not so much. But you've got to make sure that you and your partner can truly not spend money if the market has a down year and you don't have the income to spend. Everyone says they can, but very few actually can in reality. And it's typically one partner, and it can just wreak havoc on your long-term security. So you've got to be aware of that. And then you got to know what your income gap. This is the difference between your guaranteed income and your total expenses. And it determines how much you need from your investments and what you're going to do in years where the market's down. You also want to know your withdrawal and your tax strategy. Where is the income going to come from each year and in what order? We talked about this a little bit, but you've got to be clear on this. And then how are the taxes going to impact what you are living on? And the most important thing is making sure that you have the different products in the right bucket so that you've got the products as far as from a tax perspective in buckets so that you can minimize your taxes, maximize your return, and you've got the flexibility that depending on what happens in the future, you're not stuck to just one plan. When these numbers are clear, everything changes. Decisions become easier and confidence replaces uncertainty and fear. So now let's review why guaranteed income is so important and how it reduces stress and increases freedom. So guaranteed income is what creates a stable financial foundation. You've got Social Security. If you're lucky enough to have a corporate pension, look up to the heavens and say thank you. Many don't, and especially now. And so you've got to have guaranteed income streams. And the most common one is through an insurance company where you purchase an annuity. And there are a lot of different types of annuities. I encourage you to select one. You always use a fiduciary, but select one where you've got the guaranteed income, but you also have flexibility as far as if you need some of that money. A lot of people get into ones where they can't get money out, and it can be disastrous. You want to have income you can count on regardless of market conditions. And that's what these guaranteed buckets do. They ensure that your essential needs and expenses are covered. And again, those are housing, healthcare, daily living expenses, all of those things like insurance, taxes. You don't have to rely on market performance, the government, or your partner to meet your basic needs. This is so critical. It also reduces emotional decision making. We talked about this in part one, but when people don't have a plan, they make emotional decisions. They panic when the market drops. And the result oftentimes is they have less confidence, more uncertainty, more limited emotions, anxiety, worry, fear. Whereas when they have that certainty, they have more confidence and they can stay focused on what they need to do for the long term. It allows your investments to work differently, meaning growth assets can be positioned for long-term appreciation, and you're not worried if the market adjusts. You're not forced to generate immediate income, and it allows you to minimize taxes and take income from the sources that make most sense at that time. It shifts how you feel about retirement. When you feel stable and secure versus uncertain and worried, it changes everything. There's nothing fun about being worried or fearful. You want to have freedom and choices and operate from higher, elevated emotions. Love, joy, peace, calmness, gratitude, all those things that you feel so much better than limited ones. Fear, anxiety, worry. There have been so many retirees that have shared with me that when they felt truly retired, like they could just relax, was when they knew they had predictable income and they felt their life was secure. Ugh, priceless. All right, the next one I want you to understand is the connection between clarity and emotional well-being, as well as your financial health. And it should seem kind of obvious, and yet, based on how so many people make decisions, I'm not sure it is. So I want to dive into this. Financial uncertainty clearly creates stress and anxiety, even with people that have significant assets, because they don't know if they have enough. Clarity removes the mental burden. You're no longer wondering, am I going to be okay? Or what if? What if my partner dies? What if I don't have his Social Security? What if I don't have her Social Security? You have a clear understanding of your situation. And you can go from being reactive to really being conscious and intentional in the decisions you make and not making them out of fear. Spending with purpose instead of fear is priceless, and making choices that are aligned with your goals and your values changes everything. Confidence grows when you have a plan that supports your life. It's not just the numbers on a statement. A solid plan is going to provide you real life outcomes so you can rely on it because you know your numbers. And peace of mind becomes your new baseline. You have less second guessing and you have more enjoyment of each experience you have because you're not in the back of your mind with that voice of saying, can I afford this? What should I do? Am I doing the right thing? All those things that come with that uncertainty of not knowing. True wealth includes emotional well-being, freedom, confidence, and an ability to do what you want, spending your time doing what you want and loving your life, not just financial accumulation. All right, the next point is why a coordinated plan is so important to your happiness strategy. This kind of overlaps with last week, but it's critical. Retirement planning is so much more than your investments. It includes your income, your taxes, your healthcare, and your estate planning. Everything ideally works together. Uncoordinated decisions can be so costly. You pay more in taxes than you really need to. You're taking your income at the wrong time or from the wrong bucket. Whereas a coordinated plan aligns all the moving parts. You've got your Social Security, you've got your investments, you have your pension, either your private one or your corporate one, and you've got a plan from a tax perspective to make it all work together. It's priceless. It helps you manage key risk, and it helps you to avoid the sequence of returns risk. This is such a danger for so many people. And what it is when the market downturn occurs early in retirement, and it forces retirees to sell investments at a loss to cover living expenses. This premature depletion of assets hinders portfolio recovery. And it can be devastating because it dramatically increases the risk of running out of money, even if you have above average long-term performance. It is probably the most concerning risk you have immediately in retirement. But some other ones are inflation risk. Over time, your money is worth less and the cost of living increases. You've got longevity risk, outliving your money, living too long. That is why guaranteed income is so powerful, is because, like today, I just did some numbers for a couple and their break-even point is 13 years. They're both healthy, young, and they're like, oh, they've got longevity. They could see 30 more years. I'm like, just think about that. So now 13 years you have funded, and the other 17, the insurance company is going to fund. It's priceless. But you also want to know and make sure you've got a grasp on unexpected expenses like long-term care, medical expenses, things that you may not be planning for. Estate planning also is critical because it ensures your wishes are carried out, and protecting your family and your legacy for many people is important. It makes transitions easier and more efficient. And I've read studies that people that complete their estate plan sleep better at night. They worry less because they know they've got it taken care of and they know what's going to happen. Strategy, as I hope you get, is not about products, but it's really how you create that big plan for your life. And it's not a one size fits all. It's custom to you and your situation. And this is where true retirement and happiness really comes from, knowing everything is working together and having the clarity and the confidence and the control over your life and your money so you can do what you want. You can have the freedom you want, the choices you want, and you're not worrying about it. All right, let's recap. At the end of the day, retirement happiness isn't about guessing. It's about knowing. When you know your numbers, you replace uncertainty with clarity. You replace fear with confidence, and you give yourself permission to enjoy your life. Oh, it's so priceless. You've worked hard to get here, and you deserve a retirement that feels secure, fulfilling, and aligned with what matters most to you. I just hope you know you can do this. We're here to help you every step of the way. If you're ready to really make sure your retirement plan is in place, I encourage you to go to themillionairinsider.com/support. We can help you make sure that your numbers are really in line, that your retirement plan is combined and coordinated with your tax plan and your estate plan. When you have clarity, you have confidence. And when you have confidence, you can finally relax and enjoy the life you worked so hard to build. So I encourage you to access support at themillionairinsider.com/support. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I'm Annette Ba'u. All international copyrights are reserved. Bye for now.